My mom invited my ex, who cheated with my best friend, to our family Easter dinner and told me to be civil because he's practically family. So I did this before dinner, and by the end she was begging me to take it back. Throwaway account because a few family members know my main. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. This is gonna be long, so sorry in advance. So I just found out in the worst way possible that my mom invited my ex Pete to our family Easter dinner this weekend. She didn't even have the decency to tell me directly. I found out through our stupid family group chat when she sent a message about seating arrangements. Like who TF puts Dana, Pete on south side of table without checking with me first. I almost threw my phone across the room when I saw his name. For context, Pete and I dated for 5 years before breaking up 6 months ago when I caught him cheating on me with my childhood best friend Tessa, who I've known since literally 7th grade when we bonded over having parents who went through messy divorces. Well, actually, my parents never technically divorced, but they had this whole trial separation thing when I was in high school that was basically the same thing. And this wasn't like a one-time drunk mistake or whatever. This was a full-on affair that had been going on for over a year behind my back. I met Pete during senior year of college at my roommate Jen's birthday party. He was so charming and attentive back then, always remembering little things, you know. Like he'd bring me these lemon scones from this bakery all the way across town whenever I had a bad day at work. They were my absolute favorite, and he'd drive 30 minutes out of his way just to get them. He helped me move apartments 3 different times, and I have a lot of heavy furniture, lol. One time the elevator in my building broke and he carried my grandmother's old dresser up 4 flights of stairs. I really thought he was the one or whatever. I was actually saving up to buy him an engagement ring. I know that's not the normal way around, but I was so sure about us I didn't want to wait for him to propose when I found out about the cheating. I had this whole proposal plan worked out for our anniversary and everything. The way I found out was so stupid. My phone was charging and I needed to look up some photos from our trip to his family's lake house to send to his mom. He handed me his phone and went to take a shower. Then these notifications kept popping up from Tessa with heart emojis. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something felt off. So I opened the messages and months and months of explicit messages going back over a year, pictures, plans to meet up when I was working late, times they hooked up in our bed when I was visiting my sister. And the worst part, for months before I found out, whenever I'd ask why he was texting so late or why he suddenly needed space on weekends, he'd turn it around on me, called me paranoid and unnecessarily jealous, and made me feel like I was losing my mind. I literally started going to therapy because I thought maybe I had trust issues. But nope, turns out I was right all along. And Tessa was supposed to be my best friend since 7th grade. She was the one who organized this huge surprise party for my 25th birthday and even flew in my freshman year roommate from Seattle. Like, who does that level of friendship stuff and then sleeps with your boyfriend behind your back? Anyway, when I saw Pete's name in the group chat, I immediately called my mom. I asked her why Pete was on the Easter dinner guest list. She basically told me it had been months and I needed to move on. When I reminded her he cheated on me with my best friend for a year, she dismissed it as just a mistake and said he was still practically family. She even said 5 years meant something and not everything had to be so extreme. When I asked if Tessa was invited too, since betrayal apparently didn't matter, my mom actually paused and said that wasn't a bad idea. I literally hung up on her after that. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. Later, my sister Maria called me. She's doing her master's in another state and told me mom has actually been meeting up with Pete for coffee like twice a month since we broke up. And she even helped him shop for his mom's birthday present last week. What the actual hell? I've completely cut all ties with Pete since the breakup. I mean, I occasionally check his Instagram, but just to make sure he's not posting anything about me, okay? And maybe sometimes I check Tessa's too, but whatever. For more background, my mom Candace has always been obsessed with keeping up appearances. She's been on the hospitality committee at our Presbyterian church for like 15 years and cares way too much what people in our neighborhood think. My dad Ralph just goes along with whatever keeps mom happy. He hates conflict and will literally leave the room if voices get raised. And Maria usually stays out of family drama. She's the smart one, lol. Now mom is saying if I don't come to Easter dinner, she'll tell everyone. including my judgmental Aunt Ruth, who still brings up my rebellious phase from when I was 16 and dyed my hair purple for literally 1 month, that I'm still being dramatic about the breakup and ruining another family gathering like she claims I did at Christmas, which is complete BS because I literally had the flu at Christmas and couldn't get out of bed, but whatever fits her narrative, I guess. So I've decided I'm going to Easter dinner. But I'm not just going to sit there and let my mom and Pete control everything anymore. I have a plan that will make sure everyone knows exactly who they're eating with. I'm done being the only one who knows the truth, while Pete gets to play the charming ex-boyfriend who's still part of the family. Edit. A lot of people are asking if Pete knows I'll be there. Yes, he does. That's the whole point of my mom's little seating chart. Putting us next to each other like we're some divorced couple who need to make nice for the kids or something. And she's doing assigned seating specifically to make sure I don't avoid him. Edit 2. To those asking why I'd even consider going, you clearly don't understand how my family works. If I don't show up, my mom will spin it to make me look like the immature one who can't handle being in the same room as an ex, and Pete will get to cement his place as the reasonable adult who's still part of the family. And my whole extended family will believe her because they always do. Edit 3. Someone asked about Pete's family. They live about 3 hours away, and we used to split holidays between families. His parents actually reached out to me after the breakup and were really supportive when they found out what happened. They told me they were disappointed in him, which makes my own mother's reaction even more frustrating. Edit 4. For those saying I should just bring a date to make Pete jealous, that's not what this is about. This isn't some rom-com where I'm trying to win him back or make him regret losing me. I want him and my family to face the reality of what he did. And no, I'm not going to share what my plan is yet, because knowing my luck, someone in my family would see this post. Now for the first update. So a lot has happened since my last post, and I want to thank everyone who commented with advice and support. I honestly wasn't expecting so many people to relate to my situation, which is both comforting and depressing, to be honest. Anyway, Easter dinner happened yesterday, and well, let me just start from the beginning. I spent literally 3 hours getting ready yesterday. I must have tried on like 7 different outfits before settling on this blue dress that Pete once said brings out my eyes. And no, I wasn't trying to impress him or anything. Okay, maybe a tiny part of me wanted to remind him what he lost, but whatever. I'm completely over him. I just wanted to look good for me, you know? I usually bake something from scratch for family gatherings. My mom always makes this big deal about my baking skills to everyone, but I just grabbed a store-bought cheesecake on the way. I couldn't focus on baking because I was up until like 3 a.m. finalizing what I guess I'd call my insurance policy against Pete. More on that later. So I pull up to my parents' house and I immediately see Pete's silver Accord in the driveway. Like, he got there before me, as if he still belongs there or something. I literally sat in my car for 5 minutes just breathing and reminding myself of the plan. When I finally walked in, Pete was already sitting in the living room talking to my Uncle Quentin about their stupid fantasy football league from last fall. And guess where he was sitting? In my spot, on the couch next to my mom. The corner spot I always sit in when I visit. And he was wearing the watch I bought him for his 29th birthday. The one that cost me almost an entire paycheck. I mean, who does that? My mom practically jumped up when she saw me. Oh, Dana, you made it! Like she was surprised I actually showed up. I thought she was genuinely happy to see me, but looking back, she was probably just relieved I didn't immediately cause a scene. A lot of you commented that I should just not go, but then you don't know my family. So my mom asked Pete to help in the kitchen with something. I offered to help too, trying to be a good daughter or whatever, and she told me Pete had it covered. Like what? I interpreted it as her thinking I'm incompetent in the kitchen, but later she claimed she was trying to keep you two separated for my benefit. Yeah, right. If that was true, why invite him at all? I went to the kitchen to get water like 10 minutes later and walked in on Pete helping my mom with the ham. He told me I looked nice. I just mumbled thanks while avoiding eye contact and headed to the refrigerator. Then my mom started reminiscing about that Easter when Pete and I drove through a snowstorm to surprise everyone. Pete agreed and complimented my mom's cooking, calling her Candace. Not even Mrs. Last Name anymore. They're on a first-name basis now, I guess. My hand slipped and I dropped my water glass and it shattered all over the tile floor. My mom sighed and said she'd get the broom. I insisted on cleaning it up myself, so I'm down on the floor picking up glass pieces, and Pete crouched down to help. When his hand brushed against mine, I jerked away so fast I ended up slicing my finger on a glass shard. My mom told me I've always been clumsy and asked me not to bleed on the ham. Like, seriously. Then Pete offered me a bandage from his wallet, saying he still carries them because of me, because I'm always getting little cuts and scrapes. I wanted to die right there on the kitchen floor. During the pre-dinner mingling, I overheard Pete telling my younger cousins that our breakup was mutual and we just grew apart. I was fuming but trying not to show it. My dad awkwardly patted my shoulder and whispered that I just needed to get through today, which I thought was him being supportive, but now I realize was just his usual conflict avoidance routine. Maria showed up late, thank God she came at all, and her eyes got huge when she saw Pete there. She literally mouthed, "What the fuck," at me across the room. We snuck away to the upstairs bathroom later, and she told me she knew Pete had been in contact with our mom, but didn't tell me because Mom swore it was just for closure, and she didn't want to upset me when I was finally doing better. I mean, I get it, but also, a heads up would have been nice. Honestly, I couldn't care less that Pete was there. Okay, that's a lie. I was dying inside. I caught myself counting how many times my mom laughed at his stupid jokes. 17 times. And how many times he looked at me across the room. 5 times, not 3 like I initially thought. I also noticed he still has that small scar above his eyebrow from when he fell helping my dad clean the gutters 2 years ago. Not that I care or was looking at him or whatever. The worst part was when my mom gathered everyone for the traditional family photo before dinner. She insisted that Pete stand next to me for old time's sake. I felt so trapped and humiliated, especially when my relatives started saying we still looked like a cute couple, and my great aunt asked when we were getting back together. I wanted to scream. Finally, everyone was seated for dinner. My mom had made ham, potatoes, vegetables, and homemade rolls. Then my mom asked me to say the Easter grace, which is our family tradition. I looked across the table and made eye contact with Pete, and he had this smug, satisfied smile on his face, like he'd won. Like he'd managed to get back into my family despite everything he did to me. And that's when I knew I had to go through with my plan. My hands were shaking as I reached into my purse instead of folding them for prayer. I'll post part 3 tomorrow. This is getting too long and I need to collect myself before writing out what happened next. Let's just say Easter dinner will go down in family history. Edit. To those asking if I just left after the kitchen incident, no, I didn't. I know it sounds ridiculous, but leaving would have just played into my mom's narrative that I'm being dramatic about the breakup. Plus, I had a plan. Edit 2. Several people asked if my dad ever stood up for me. He's not big on confrontation, as I mentioned in my last post, but what happened during dinner actually surprised everyone, including me. More on that tomorrow. Edit 3. For those saying I'm being petty for caring about the watch, it wasn't just any watch. It was an expensive Tissot that I saved up for months to buy him. And yes, it bothers me that he still wears it after what he did. Sue me. Edit 4. Someone asked about Tessa. No, thank God she wasn't invited. Even my mom isn't that clueless. But yes, I still check her Instagram occasionally. I know, I should block her. She's been posting these vague, inspirational quotes about trusting your heart and finding your path. Edit 5. A bunch of you are guessing what's in my purse. Let's just say it wasn't a gun or anything illegal, lol. I'm not trying to go to jail over Pete, but it was something that would make sure everyone at that table knew exactly who they were breaking bread with. Now for the second update, I'm honestly still processing everything that happened. It's been over a week since Easter dinner, and I'm finally ready to tell you guys what went down. First, thank you for all your comments and support on my previous posts. Reading them honestly gave me the courage to go through with my plan instead of just sitting there pretending everything was fine, which is what I've basically done my whole life. So, I left off at the part where everyone was seated for dinner and my mom asked me to say grace. This is like a big tradition in our family. We always take turns saying grace at holiday dinners, and Mom always picks whoever she thinks is the most spiritually centered or whatever that day. I roll. So her picking me was basically her way of saying, see, Dana's fine with Pete being here. For context, there were 23 people at our dining room table. My mom had used my grandmother's old tablecloth, which she only brings out for super special occasions. Apparently having my cheating ex at Easter qualifies as special now. So anyway, everyone's looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to say this beautiful, heartfelt prayer, or whatever. My mom had this smug little smile. Pete was sitting there looking all comfortable and at home, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't pretend. I stood up and I reached into my purse. My hands were actually steadier than I expected, probably because I'd rehearsed this like 20 times in my bathroom mirror the night before. I pulled out my phone and this little portable Bluetooth speaker I bought specifically for this occasion. I cleared my throat and said I thought everyone should know exactly who we're breaking bread with today. You guys should have seen my mom's face. Her smile just dropped. My dad looked confused as hell, which is basically his default expression at family gatherings, to be honest. Maria's eyes got huge because I think she realized what was about to happen. I pressed play on the first recording. It was Pete from the night I confronted him about the affair. He was crying and begging for forgiveness while at the same time blaming me for pushing him away with my excessive work hours and my supposed emotional unavailability. Like, I worked 45 hours a week at a job I love, while this man couldn't even remember to put his socks in the hamper, but somehow I'm the emotionally unavailable one. The dining room was completely silent. Then I played the second recording. This one was Tessa admitting the affair had been going on for 14 months. 14 months. That's more than a year of my life living a complete lie. And then the final recording. This was Pete, drunk at his friend's apartment about a month before I caught him, bragging about how he was having the best of both worlds by keeping me clueless while having fun with Tessa on the side. My Aunt Ruth gasped. My teenage cousins Zach and Jake started recording everything on their phones. Gen Z, am I right? And Pete just sat there frozen. His face was this weird shade of gray-white. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I had printed out screenshots. Lots of screenshots. Text convos between Pete and Tessa where they were explicitly mocking me and my family. There was one where Pete made fun of my mom and my dad. I had made copies. For everyone at the table. I passed them around like party favors. I told everyone Happy Easter in a surprisingly calm voice, even though my heart was racing. My mom's face, I thought she was mad at me at first, but then I realized she was just processing what Pete had said about her in those texts. Pete finally snapped out of his shock. He stood up so fast he knocked over his water glass. He started yelling at me, saying I was psychotic for keeping those messages and asking what kind of person records private conversations. And then something incredible happened. My dad, my conflict-avoiding, room-leaving, perpetually quiet dad, stood up too. He told Pete to sit down or get out of his house in a voice I've never heard him use before. Pete wasn't backing down. He shouted that I was manipulating everything and that these were all taken out of context. He said I was just bitter because he moved on. I just smiled and played one final recording. It was Pete telling his friend how he was using my mom to stay connected to my family for networking opportunities with my Uncle Quentin's law firm. My mom put her hand over her mouth. I could see her mascara starting to run as her eyes filled with tears. Pete started saying he didn't mean it like that and that he was just venting to a friend. Uncle Quentin, who had been silently reading through the texts, looked up and asked Pete if he had any shame or dignity left. Pete tried to leave, but Maria was standing right behind his chair. As he turned, she accidentally bumped into him and spilled her entire glass of red wine all over his stupid white dress shirt. The same shirt I bought him for Christmas last year. She said, "Oops," and my bad. I swear I didn't plan that part with Maria, but it was perfect. By this point, my mom was crying, mascara running down her face. She begged me to take it all back and delete the recordings. I told her that forgiveness is earned, not demanded, just like respect. My dad told Pete it was time for him to leave. Pete stormed toward the door, but on his way out, he bumped into the dessert cart and knocked over the store-bought cheesecake I'd brought. It landed face down on the carpet. I said he was always making a mess that someone else has to clean up. Then I went back to my car and brought in my backup dessert, a custom cake I'd ordered that had screenshots of Pete's texts printed on edible paper with Happy Easter written in pastel frosting. I asked who wanted cake. Everyone was silent for like a full minute. Then Aunt Ruth started talking about how the pastor's wife got caught shoplifting from Target last week, and somehow that broke the awkwardness a little. We actually managed to eat dinner, though it was pretty much the most uncomfortable meal of my entire life. I left soon after dessert, even though my mom kept tearfully asking me to stay longer. I just couldn't. I was emotionally drained. In the weeks since Easter, almost every member of my family has reached out to me. My cousins sent me the videos they took. Uncle Quentin called to tell me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Even judgmental Aunt Ruth sent me a card saying she was sorry for not knowing the whole story. My mom didn't contact me for 17 days. 17 days. Finally, my dad arranged for us to meet for lunch at this neutral restaurant downtown. It was super awkward at first. My mom kept rearranging the silverware and wouldn't look me in the eye. Eventually, she apologized. She admitted she had kept in contact with Pete because she couldn't let go of the future she had imagined, with him as a son-in-law and the father of her grandchildren. Like, I get it, I guess, but it still hurts that she valued hypothetical grandkids over her actual daughter's feelings, you know? We're slowly rebuilding our relationship. She's agreed to give me space and respect my boundaries. Maria told me Pete has reached out to several family members trying to explain his side, but everyone has been ignoring him. Good. I know my Easter revenge probably wasn't the most mature approach. I probably could have handled things differently. But honestly, after months of being lied to and manipulated by both Pete and my mom, it felt really freeing to finally force some truth into the situation. I've completely moved on from Pete, mostly. I mean, I still occasionally look at Tessa's Instagram, but that's mostly just out of morbid curiosity. I heard through mutual friends that Pete and Tessa's relationship ended about a month after Easter when she caught him cheating with some girl from his office. Shocker, right? Once a cheater, always a cheater, I guess. Some of my family members think what I did was excessive. Maybe it was, but I don't regret showing everyone who Pete really is. Sometimes you need to break tradition and a cheesecake to break free from toxic patterns. Edit. For everyone asking if I regret what I did, no, I don't. If my mom had given me a heads up about inviting Pete, or listened to my concerns when I called her, or shown literally any respect for my feelings, none of this would have happened. She created this situation, not me. Edit 2. Several people have asked if Pete and I have had any contact since Easter. The answer is no. He texted me the next day calling me mentally unstable and saying I need serious help, but I blocked his number. He tried to reach me through a mutual friend last week, but I shut that down immediately. Edit 3. A surprising number of you are asking about the cake, lol. It was just a basic chocolate cake from this local bakery, nothing fancy. The baker was super understanding when I explained the situation in very vague terms and helped me with the edible image printing. No, I don't have pics because my phone was still hooked up to the Bluetooth speaker during cake time. Edit 4. To the person who asked if my mom still has coffee with Pete. Are you kidding me? After those texts about her, hell no. She may have questionable judgment sometimes, but even she has some standards. Edit 5. For those asking about my dad, yeah, I was shocked too. He later told me he's always hated Pete, but kept quiet because he thought I was happy. The recordings were apparently the last straw for him. We actually had a really good talk last weekend, and he apologized for not being more supportive when Pete and I broke up. Better late than never, I guess.